Hi, and thank you to Horse SA for again promoting personal and professional development activities and continuing to recognise and support the need for training individuals and coaches on how to build confidence. My name is Bianca Staworski and I'm from Empowerment for Riders. Improving confidence around horses is a popular topic around the world, and I am regularly approached to assist with strategies or techniques to help people achieve their goals of being more confident either riding or handling horses. I'm a qualified transformational coach and horse archery instructor, as well as an equine assisted learning practitioner. As you can see, I have a variety of qualifications, but I'm not going to bore you with going through them now. I'm currently furthering my qualifications with studying a Master in Counselling Practice, with my spheres of interest being a focus on trauma, treatment of PTSD in veterans and other people impacted by this through providing equine-assisted psychotherapy, horse archery, equine-assisted learning, and of course, confidence building. I am absolutely passionate about helping people move through anxiety into confident riding. As I alluded to at the beginning, the overview of today's presentation is how experience impacts our confidence, bringing attention to our sympathetic nervous system and our parasympathetic nervous system, and why we need to understand our autonomic nervous system, how we can assist riders to embrace confident riding or handling, what happens when riders fall, and then we'll be finishing up with a question and answer at the end. I also encourage people to ask questions along the way if they want clarification on any of the slides. Please don't be shy, as there may be someone else who has a similar question. What I do ask though is that we refrain from sharing horror stories, as that can just reinforce trauma or anxiety. And as you can see, this is a pre-recorded session for my Horse SA information session held on the 23rd of July 2018. So how does experience impact our confidence? As I've previously cited this quote in presentations for Horse SA and Riding for the Disabled Association, I have yet to find another quote that so eloquently sums up riding experience. So here it is again. For those that have attended one of my presentations before, my apologies for having to listen to this again. For those that haven't, then I hope that you love this as much as I do. So the quote is, learning to know horses, read them, handle them, ride and control them is quite difficult, non-linear and not always logical. It takes years of patience and persistence, but then that is part of the fun. During our journey, by definition, the learning experience will be filled with, well, experiences. Experiences from which we learn. And some of those experiences will be uplifting, some scary, some will bruise, and some will make us laugh out loud for joy. Every person's experiences are completely unique to each of them. Research shows that two people can both be exposed to the same event and have completely different experiences of that event. What impacts people may be related to their core beliefs about themselves, any previous experiences, both horse-related and non-horse-related, including developmental attachment styles, and what their innate personality and processing style is. That is why it's important to not take a one-size-fits-all approach to building confidence. Daly and Becton, in their 2012 publication Riding Fear-Free, state, fearful riders often use what-if thinking to imagine the worst-case scenario possible, thus activating their fear even if their true circumstances don't warrant it. Our brain has the amazing ability to distort recollections of events. It is possible for a rider to have a number of amazing experiences with their horse and still remember incorrectly that they have never had a good ride. Unfortunately, if you mostly remember and dwell on any scary experiences, those times when you may have been hurt or spend time using what if thinking, it is no wonder your body is trying to keep you safe by making you feel like you need to avoid those situations. If we spent time after each ride accurately recording our experience, a risk assessment and observation of our horse and including goals for improvement, we may find that our experience transforms into a more balanced representation of what actually occurred. This is where keeping a journal is a fantastic way to reduce distortions that we place on our or our students' experience. This free journal is also available on my website for you to print out and utilise with your clients or for yourselves. I want to spend just a little bit of time on this journal, and it is such a transformational process and can benefit every rider given a suitable level of development where they are able to reflect. You can either ask your riders to do this individually after riding, or depending on their capability, they may be able to complete the journal with your assistance. It's important to review the journal in its entirety at the end of each session, so that riders can see their experiences correctly reflected. Apart from the obvious questions like date and event, start with the observations section. This is where we encourage your students' phenomenological observation skills of their horse. By phenomenological observation, I mean observing without interpretation. It's harder than you think. And as equestrians, we tend to interpret our horse's body language almost subconsciously rather than just observing. On the next slide, I'll give you an example of this when we do a little activity. Before we do that, I'd like to finish with explaining the journal. The reflection section encourages your rider to think about what worked well in the ride and what didn't, without dwelling on it. Your rider might reflect that the horse's walk was calm and they felt good. What might not have worked well could be when the horse went into a trot, if they gripped tightly on the reins, the horse lifted his head and they bounced on the horse feeling unbalanced, or something like that. Whatever happened, just get the rider to record it. The goals section looks at what the rider wants to achieve when they ride. Remember, these are the rider's goals, not the coach's or the parents', and may not be related to a riding skill. It could be simply a goal of let go of one of the reins and scratch the horse. For people with anxiety, something simple like that can be a big deal. Now we come to one of the most important parts of this journal, the confidence scale. That's all those little smiley faces, or not so smiley faces. This ties in cognition, which is what we have been doing with the sections of observation, reflection and goals, to a body-focused or somatic approach. By this, I mean what the rider feels. The benefit of this scale only becomes really useful when we have a few riding lessons to track improvements or declines in confidence. Then it becomes quite telling on what the rider is experiencing that they may not verbalise or express. Some of your riders, when it comes to confidence, may display a picture of calm and confidence, but under the surface they may be experiencing increasing levels of anxiety. So now we get to practice our skills of phenomenological observation. Remember, this is just observing what you see without interpretation. Maybe a bit hard to see all the details, but we can see enough from this photo to do the activity. So those listening at home, press pause on your video and go and do this. And when you're ready, restart and come back to us. So what have you observed? Some of the things that I looked at was the offside hind of the first horse isn't putting much weight on it. The horse's leg is cocked and the ears pricked forward. They have a soft eye and a relatively floppy tail. The head carriage is about average height, i.e. not too high. And their nostrils appear to be at rest. They're not flared. So looking at this, consider, what is the horse communicating to you? What are they experiencing? Horses are an equal partner in this process. So it's important to consider what they are saying. This brings us to the sympathetic nervous system. So those that have listened to my presentations before would be aware about the sympathetic nervous system. So if you haven't heard of it before, just pause this video and just read through some of the things on your screen. Welcome back. The sympathetic nervous system operates unconsciously, controlling our flight, fight, or freeze response. It functions to keep us safe, preserve homeostasis, which is the stable state, balance, or equilibrium within our body. It is pretty obvious when our sympathetic nervous system is activated. Think back to when you've gotten scared. What have you noticed? So pause the video and just jot down some things that you notice that occur in your body when you get scared. And when you're ready, come back to us. So some clues are your mouth becoming dry, your heart rate increases, you feel nauseated, and you may have the overwhelming feeling of just needing to get out of the situation. Does this ring any bells when it comes to your or your client's experience of nervousness around horses? It is important to note that I am no way saying that the sympathetic nervous system isn't good. It is an integral part of our body so that we stay safe, alive, and thriving. This brings us to the parasympathetic nervous system. So this also unconsciously regulates the body's homeostasis and works in a constant balancing act in conjunction with the sympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is often called the rest and digest function. So what are the clues that your parasympathetic nervous system is activated? Just pause the video and jot down some of the things that you recognize when your parasympathetic nervous system is activated. So some of the clues that is activated is that your heart rate decreases and you feel relaxed and calm. With all my yawning, my apologies, it sounds like my parasympathetic nervous system is very well and truly activated. I'm sure we know all about situations when it's obvious that this system is activated. Think about when you're having a wonderful massage or have had a lazy, calm ride on a beautiful day. That's your parasympathetic nervous system. And as with the sympathetic nervous system, I am in no way saying that the parasympathetic nervous system is the good guy and the sympathetic nervous system is the bad guy. If you're driving a car and you need fast reaction speed to get out of the way of a potential crash, then you want an activated sympathetic nervous system, not a parasympathetic nervous system. You can probably guess as to why we need to understand our parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. Understanding how to recognize when your sympathetic nervous system is aroused and activate your parasympathetic nervous system can improve a rider's experiences relating to confidence. This is not about attempting to stop your sympathetic nervous system by ignoring it, distraction, or shoving the feelings down deep inside. That doesn't help and may only delay the outward expression of the client's anxiety. What we do need is to use our body's natural physiological response to bring our body back into equilibrium. So how do we do this? There are a number of ways to activate our parasympathetic nervous system, and today we're going to be looking at several of them. Horses are masters of awareness and have a unique ability to regulate their emotions and stress levels. When we work with riders who are experiencing an anxiety reaction, we endeavour to get them to follow the way of the horse. For example, let's utilise our phenomenological observation to consider what happens when horses get a fright. So just pause the video and just jot down some of the things that you would generally see if a horse gets a fright. So some of the things that we see is that horses will generally raise their heads, prick their ears, tense their bodies, flare their nostrils, open their eyes wide, raise their tails, race around, then stop, do a big snort or out-breath and go back to grazing, as though nothing ever happened. It is also similar to a horse shaking to get rid of excess energy. Imagine if we were able to regulate ourselves like a horse. That out-breath is the key. Slowly breathing out into the experience. It is really important that we breathe in through our nose and exhale out through our mouth. The in-breath needs to be shorter than the out-breath to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. If the in-breath is longer than the out-breath, we actually activate the sympathetic nervous system, which is not what we want in this situation. So we breathe in, pause, and then exhale long. I do this with my clients so that they don't feel silly. Just so we're all clear, I'd like to do this as a group. Those listening at home, I'll demonstrate, and then if we can do it together at home, it'll really help tie it in. So this is the out breath. So let's do this together as a group of those listening. This is like us signalling for our parasympathetic nervous system's attention. I continue to do this with my clients as long as they need it. For example, I encourage a client to do out-breaths in all of these situations if required. If a client starts to get nervous on the way to a session in the car, I get them to do an out-breath or do the out-breaths. When a client goes to the paddock to get a horse, when a client is tacking up, when a client is on a mounting block, when a client is mounting, when a client is riding, anytime the client starts to feel nervous or their anxiety increases, and anytime their horse takes a big out-breath. The out-breath is truly remarkable and a simple way to wake up our parasympathetic nervous system. It's why this breathing technique is used in meditation, yoga, qigong. It brings calm and encourages us to be fully present in the moment. If you have a client that is not using their out-breath properly and showing increasing anxiety, I'd change the technique slightly. So I have a short in-breath, a pause, and then I vibrate my lips on the out-breath. You have to do this with your client, otherwise they are going to feel really, really silly. I'll show you what I mean, and then those listening, you can do them with me. Just like that. So if everyone wants to give it a go with me and we're listening. So these vibrating out breaths can be done all the same times as a normal out breath. So if your client is having difficulty with both of these breathing exercises, and they potentially can when they're quite anxious, then I introduce a slow, low-tone song. It's all the same and gets the client breathing. And I also sing along with the client if I know the song, so they don't feel embarrassed. Another way to activate our parasympathetic nervous system is to bring attention to a physical sensation while breathing into the experience using the out-breath. This is a mindfulness exercise and is really useful for being fully aware in the present. This may show this may be how the client's bottom feels against the saddle, or what the soles of their feet feel like against the stirrups. Just talk them through and get them to focus on the sensation. So those listening at home, how are you going so far with the information? And if there's anything at all that I'm presenting that you would like some further clarification on, please just send me an email or a Facebook message, and I would be more than happy to answer your questions. The next activity that activates the parasympathetic nervous system is a grounding exercise. This brings psychoeducation and the way of the horse into the session and is done before the client mounts their horse. And once you're on, you can actually also ground through your horse if needed, if you lose that sensation. So those at home, I'd like to do this all together. And if you are comfortable and not at any potential risk of triggering, I'd like you to close your eyes if possible. So let's take the cue from the way horses regulate their emotions and do 3 big out breaths together. Horses have a unique connection to the earth, with all 4 hooves solid and grounded. Now please bring your awareness into your feet. Feel what the sensation of your shoes against the soles of your feet is like. Now focus on the sensation of your feet on the ground. Is the pressure evenly placed, or do you have more weight distributed on the balls of your feet, or maybe your soles? Breathe into this sensation. Now imagine that you are sending roots, stretching deeper and deeper into the earth, feeling connected, solid and grounded. But this feeling is almost like nothing can knock you over. And you might have some sensations in your feet like tingling. That's just showing you that your awareness is down there and you're grounded really well. And if you don't have any sensations like that, that doesn't mean that you aren't also getting this. So spend a couple of minutes experiencing this sensation. Continue to breathe into the groundedness. So I'm going to continue on with the presentation, but you are more than welcome to pause the video and spend some time doing this. Okay, so if you can gently open your eyes while continuing to keep your awareness in your feet and deep into the earth. If you're comfortable, it'd be really great to reflect on what that experience was like for you, and just jot that down. This can all form part of your journal. The wonderful thing about this grounding technique is it can be used anytime you are trying to activate your parasympathetic nervous system, such as prior to handling horses, mounting, or even giving that big presentation at work. I can tell you I was doing exactly that before I started speaking to you on this video. Spend as long as you need doing this exercise until you feel more grounded and connected. There is no rush, and the more you practice, the easier it will be to use the out-breath and grounding when you are feeling dysregulated. This brings us to the comfort zone. Let's start with the comfort zone using green, amber and red. When a client is in the comfort or green zone, they will feel, well, comfortable, unchallenged, and know their tasks completely. Unfortunately, if we remain within the comfort zone, we will never learn anything new. So while easy, it isn't beneficial for us to remain in this area. Then we move to the learning or the amber zone. This is where we feel both challenged and supported, where our capabilities are stretched but not snapped. We learn new things without distress. Over time, these zones expand and reduce as we become more comfortable with our skills and abilities. For example, cantering for a beginner rider would be way outside the learning zone. But as we increase our skills, it would probably be located in our expanding comfort zone. Then we have the point of maximum learning. So just look at that area where that arrow is pointing and that thin white line. So as you can see, there's a very fine line between pushing ourselves or our clients to expand themselves and learn more skills and techniques, and then tipping them over into the panic zone. The panic zone is exactly as it sounds. There is no learning in this area, and the prefrontal cortex actually starts to shut down. If you are in this zone, it just reinforces fear, anxiety, and encourages a primal flight, fight, or freeze reaction. So the best bet is to try and stay out of that red zone, that panic zone. So Daly and Beckton, in their 2012 book, have a wonderful table asking these 4 questions on the slide. It's from their book, Riding Fear Free. It's so useful that I wanted to share part of it with you. This information is not presented as the actual thing to do, or in fact, neither am I endorsing or denouncing these suggestions. This is about thinking about alternatives. What you implement has to be right for you and your horse. So the first section, what if my horse spooks? Daly and Beckton ask, what would you normally do in that situation? That's not actually being scared, but what would you normally do to control that? Do you disengage the horse's hindquarters? If you do, whatever you do, you need to practice this in a safe place. Would you do an emergency dismount? If so, practice this. Practice both of these, potentially in a certain sequence, so that you are prepared if that horse spooks at that time. The next dot point there. So what happens if my horse jigs? The authors suggest that you can always dismount and do some ground exercises with the horse. by choosing a task that challenges the horse's mind rather than just lunging in a circle. Whatever you do, this has to be right for you and your horse. And then that brings us to the next dot point. What happens if the horse throws his head? The authors suggest that go directly to a one rein and ask the horse to bend his head around and lower it. If the horse continues to toss his head, disengage his hip to a complete stop and dismount. Do some groundwork around lowering the horse's head with minimal or no pressure before getting back on to continue riding. As I said, I'm not endorsing or dismissing any of these ideas. I'm just suggesting that you need to think about it as a way to combat your what-ifs. So the next line, the last line there, what happens if my horse runs away or bolts? The question is, what would you do in this situation? The authors discuss implementing an anchoring rein stop, which they said is similar to a one rein stop. But what they completely agree is that whatever you work out to do in these situations, you need to practice this so it becomes more subconscious and you understand what happens when you do these things. It's all about practice. That brings us to welcoming awareness and experiences. I really love this quote as it just sums up what we need to do to move beyond our anxiety. Change occurs when one becomes what he is, not when he tried to become what he is not. So what does this mean? Without experiencing emotions and sensations in the here and now, being fully present, we cannot change. It is through this present awareness that the real transformation occurs. So this brings me to emotions and society's views on good emotions and bad emotions. Anger, sadness and fear tend to get a bad rap as being less desirable, but they do show us another part of being truly alive and in the present. It is these so-called bad emotions that we try our best to shut off, shut down deep inside of us to avoid experiencing them. The issue with this is that the emotion threatens to overwhelm us, or it comes out in situations that may be completely unrelated. We may get asked to hand someone a hoof pick, and then all of a sudden this huge emotion hits us left field, absolutely flooring us. And we think, where did that come from? So how does this apply to less confident riders? What do people do when they start feeling nervous? They try to distract themselves or shut it off, anything, so they don't experience it. And what happens? It roars out of them or it sits just below the surface. It doesn't stop until the rider gets off. And if you understand anything about classical conditioning, what we've done is we've linked the horse with the emotion. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about this in a later slide. So what can we do? How often have we heard or even repeated to ourselves the old saying, fake it till you make it? Or another one, don't let your horse see your fear, sit tall, put a smile on your face even when you're frightened. It does work in some situations, but as a rider, what does it communicate to your horse? As mentioned before, your horse is a master of awareness, constantly scanning for changes in the environment that may signal a threat or food. Think about snapping a carrot in half or just touching a feed bucket, and it's quite likely that from across the paddock your horse will raise their head and prick their ears, if they don't come cantering up towards you. So consider, how does your horse feel about your mixed emotions, your mixed signals? The fear, the tension required to hold that fear at bay, the avoidance, the pretending, the masked communications of confidence. How do you honour and respect your horse by sending these mixed signals? And in fact, how do you honour yourself? Consider that confidence is brave truth, not pretending, avoiding or distracting. We can encourage riders to accept and feel their truth, which in this scenario that we're talking about would be their fear or their anxiety. And breathing into it, welcoming it, hearing its message and getting extra support. The key is, what support does the rider need right now? So if you regularly display fear or anxiety or have a student that does, before even getting on the horse, try a visualization technique. This can be the circle of confidence or another one. I won't walk you through the circle of confidence today, but if you would like a PDF of the circle of confidence, please send me an email and I'll send it to you. For this exercise, I encourage you all to close your eyes if you feel comfortable to do so while I walk you through the visualization. You can do the same for your students if you're a coach. Imagine you are riding your horse. Really breathe life into it. Make the colours of the image really strong and the edges crisp. Don't rush this. Spend the time required so you actually imagine you are riding. Can you feel that rocking movement of the horse walking, or the soft, warm fur of the horse's coat? What do you hear? Smell? Touch? If you are a less confident rider, the clue that your brain believes you are riding may be some of the sympathetic nervous system symptoms that we mentioned earlier. Once you're there, what sensations arrived in your body? What do they look like? Do they have a shape, a texture, a colour, a temperature? Where are they located in your body? In your stomach? Your chest? Between your shoulder blades? Do these sensations have an emotion attached to them? Sadness, joy, fear, anger? Spend some time exploring these so that you are fully aware. If the sensation or emotion has a message for you, what would it say? Use your out-breath to really feel into sensations and experience. Exploring what this means for you in connection to riding or handling. So come back into the room and open your eyes. How did that feel for you? Could you imagine that you were riding? Spend all the time you can describing a complete picture so that the rider is able to visualise it. And importantly, is have fun with this process. And another step is to journal your experience. Now, how do we apply this on horseback? Simply by experiencing and welcoming awareness of these experiences. It's important to also make sure that the horse is suitably matched to your skills, experience and confidence, as well as inviting the horse to participate. Prior to mounting or handling the horse, practice a few out-breaths and grounding. Go through the same process that you did with the visualization exercise. Check for any sensations either on the ground or mounted, including emotions linked to these. This is the second exercise we did. Practice being horse to help regulate stress levels. Take all the time that you and your horse needs to breathe into and fully experience this. Continually check in using their inner awareness. Curiously notice signs when your parasympathetic nervous system is activated. A clue that this is happening may be you're starting to feel calmer. Make sure that you thank your horse for their help in supporting your experience and experiencing of your less confident self. This would bring me to my biggest bugbear. As equestrians, I'm sure we have either had someone tell us, when you fall, just get back on. Or we've repeated that gem to others or ourselves. That advice can either help or hinder riders. Think back to the slide on the comfort zone. Is the behaviour that they are displaying indicating that they are beyond the point of maximum learning? If so, do not force someone to get back on the horse. There are a couple of reasons why. This may be a safety risk, and by this I mean that the rider's prefrontal cortex in effect could have gone offline. What this means is that they are highly likely that they will not be able to follow directions or react in a safe manner. We see this time and time again. When something goes wrong, everyone is yelling at the rider and it's like they are just frozen, unable to do anything. You do not want an unresponsive rider on the back of a horse. Another reason is that you have the very real potential of re-traumatizing the rider further and reinforcing a link or classically conditioned pairing between horses and fear, or horses and anxiety. So I mentioned previously that I would be talking a little bit more about classical conditioning or classical conditioned pairing. So this is what happens when we pair or link one stimulus to another. So before conditioning, riding a horse equals no fear or anxiety. During the conditioning stage, which is normally what happens when we fall off, but during the conditioning stage, we have riding the horse, which is a conditioned stimulus, plus a traumatic accident, which is an unconditioned stimulus, equals fear or anxiety, which is an unconditioned response. Don't worry if you don't remember this. You'll get the picture. And then after conditioning, so after this learning experience, we have riding the horse, which is a conditioned stimulus, paired to fear and anxiety, which is a conditioned response. So what happens is every time someone goes to that particular horse or horses in general, they automatically start feeling fear or anxiety, regardless of what is happening, no matter how calm the horse is being. So that's the classic reason why we do not get people to get back on a horse. Anyway, enough of that. Here's some of the references I used. Look, there's some great articles there. And there's a whole heap more as well, but there's some really, really good books there for you to have a look at. So now I'm sure that you have some burning questions to ask. So for those that are listening at home, please send me an email or a message if you have burning questions. And before we go into the question and answer in the session, the live session rather than this pre-recorded session, I just wanted to provide you with my contact details, website, Facebook and email address if you'd like to stay connected or access new information as I prepare it. I'd also be really interested in having your feedback because Empowerment for Riders is on a continuous improvement process. So if you go onto my website, onto contact and then feedback, there's a form there that you can complete, and I would really appreciate how we can improve more. So finally, thank you again to Horse SA for asking me to come back yet again and present to you. I hope you have all gained some extra information on building, handling or riding confidence. Thank you very much.